So let's pray. Father, as we look at the events taking place in the world and consider it in light of the French Revolution and the fact that all things again are moving the world into a revolution, we pray that you might open our eyes, let your Spirit come close, forgive us, tabernacle with us, and teach us, for we desire to learn. This is my humble asking in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, once again, this presentation is based on Revelation chapter 11, verses 1 all the way to 13. So we're looking again at... Is this working? No. Okay, so I guess the next slide. So we have here this idea again of transformation, which was by this fellow J.B. Lambert. And all of these principles, again, came out of the French Revolution. And in his idea of transformation, he talks about survival of the fittest. And I told you that according to Charles Darwin, who read his works and came up with the principles of evolution, I told you that he says it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one that's most responsive to change. How can we see this presently in Guyana? Well, there's a couple of things. We're going to talk about survival of the fittest just a moment. But the idea of evolution that was adopted by Charles Darwin from this fellow, it's taught evolution in biology for CXC. For those of you that are in primary school or in high school, it will be part of the curriculum if you're studying biology or integrated science, where evolution is taught. And it's taught in all the schools around the world. But more than this idea of survival of the fittest is an interesting idea. This article, Survival of the Fittest, was found in the Kaichur News. And by the way, these ideas, like I told you, they're everywhere. And I'm going to show you today that they're in the Adventist Church, they're in America, and they're in Guyana. These are the three most important places to us here. What happens in America is important because America is the beast that rose up out of the earth in Revelation chapter 13, and America is in Revelation chapter 11 at the end, and America, it is from there that, really, as goes America, so goes the rest of the world. What's happening in Guyana is important to us because we live here, and what's happening in the Adventist Church is important because it's our church. And so what's happening in this article in the Kaichur News, they talked about the differences between capitalism and that which is occurring in our world today. And it was very interesting because what's happening in Guyana is that we're dealing with crazy amounts of inflation. Guyana right now is going through extreme inflation. If you woke up to 2024 in January, you would have noticed that every single thing in the market went up. Those of you would have been, like me, grappling with $1,200, I'm not sure, $1,200 back to, you would have been grappling with $1,200 tomatoes and, I don't know, some crazy price for sweet peppers, and there you go, for a cut of pumpkin. And those prices kind of came down, and then other things have gone down in a series that I believe someone of the news organizations here in Guyana is doing called The Cost of Living. They showed how cost of living is affecting people in Guyana. And one lady said the macaroni that she buys, you know, everybody in Guyana buys a couple of things. Usually the general public, they buy chow mein, they buy a macaroni, they buy a tin of tomato paste, they buy a tin sausage. These things are usually in hampers if they're giving them out. Everybody buys a couple of these things, like cornmeal and, you know, what have you. Well, they showed that all of those articles went up in Guyana. Now, when the $5,000 bill came out, people said it was nice. I said, indeed, it looked really nice, but it's a bad omen. The only countries that start printing big money like this as single bills are those countries that are in financial collapse. And it's as if Guyanese don't realize, but fear not, as it was in the time of France, where they were in a financial free fall because of the war, the American Revolution, and several other things going on within the European nations of themselves. All nations in the world are in financial collapse. America is in trillion-dollar debt. Guyana, we were better positioned, but then oil came. And what the oil has done, if you saw the budget that was passed this year, what our country is doing now is borrowing more money based on the fact that we have oil. All that's doing is increasing our debt to billions of dollars. And all that means, anybody that has more debt, you're in financial trouble. And that's exactly what's happening again. No, the idea again of survival of the fittest are those that can thrive and survive in this kind of idea. And what Guyanese are doing is that this is the countries with the highest crime rate right now in the world. And Guyana is the 8th countries all around the world with the highest crime rate per capita. It's based on the amount of people that you have. Guyana is right up there in the top 10. Now, a lot of people don't understand what's going on in the present world, but what Guyanese have decided to do is survive. Darwin said it's not the most intelligent people again. It's the ones that are responsive to change. What are we going to do when a piece of pumpkin is $1,000 a slice? What are you going to do? You're going to steal. No? Most people are going to steal. People are going to steal. And that's exactly what's happening in Guyana. That's why our crime rate, 2023, we had the most murders ever in our country. And it's going to go up now. Yes, per capita, it's based on the amount of people in our country. Now, let me show you some more of this. Remember I told you that in the French Revolution, the principles that occurred there were principles that pushed the richer and the poorer, so that the poor hated the rich, the middle class was wiped out. And what ensued, because 80% of the people were poor, it was only 20% that were rich. So what ensued was a revolution. Well, our country, what they've done is they've brought in China in a way that China has never been in the country before. So the Chinese always had restaurants, you know, Fuyang, whomever, we used to go buy Chinese food, and we call it in a bottom shop. Now, however, Chinese have gotten duty recessions in Guyana, so they don't have to pay as much. And they have been concessions, and they've been invited into the country. And what they've done is within the last 5 years, Chinese have opened somewhere between 100 and 150 supermarkets in this country. And it continues on. Now, Kenya, the same thing happened in Kenya. And the result of this was the closing of thousands of small shops. And so that in Kenya, it wasn't good for the economy. It was bad because the people couldn't compete with the Chinese goods. This very same thing is happening right now in Guyana. And again, remember I told you, transformation theory, J.B. Labart, is the survival of the fittest. What will the Guyanese people do when you push them and push them and push them so they cannot keep up with the cost of living? They cannot compete in sales. Teachers have taken to the streets. The other public servants are talking about fighting. We're told that unions will bring about a time as such as never was before. By the way, this is not particular to Guyana. Like I told you, these principles are all over the world. I just wanted to show you what's happening in Guyana. In Revelation chapter 11, it said that they would die in a place that was like Egypt in terms of evolution, in terms of Darwinism, but also like Sodom in terms of what the place is like. I put a picture there of matrimony because matrimony to me all is pornography on the streets. That's all that is. But now you can look, if you look at homosexuality in Guyana, we had constitutional reforms for years where we did not allow, for example, cross-dressing. That was revoked either last year or the year before. We now have a very small but prominent voice among the LGBTQ world that are pushing to remove all forms of banning, I guess, from the Constitution so that we can have marriage, because this is the idea. Now, when you remove marriage between man and woman from a society, you're doing, Sister White says, it's one of the number one things to destroy the society. And this is exactly what the devil does, because these are his principles. By the way, these principles are not only his principles. The principles of the French Revolution were principles that were the result of the Roman Catholicism and the rule of the Catholic Church. And like I said, it's going right away around back again. This book, Sacred Sweetness, a coloring book for adults based on the book of Song of Solomon in the Bible, is actually published by Seventh Adventists here in Guyana. It's available on Amazon. Now, when I saw this, I had to go check it out because I know this person. This is what you would call soft porn. It's a coloring book where there are drawings inside of different poses based on the book of Song of Solomon. And it's being sold for adults. Now, whilst I am good friends and I appreciate that the Adventist Church perhaps needs more dialogue on sexuality in counseling for couples, this sort of thing is soft pornography, and it can lead people down a slippery slope. Like I told you, that which is going on in the world is in the church. It's kind of fascinating to me, all these varying ideas. Now, here we go, and I told you that the movie world Voltaire used the movie world as theater to mock God, because during the French Revolution, they were going against Catholicism. And so whatever was coming from Catholicism, these principles were fostered as hate against it, because the priests and the Roman Catholics were part of the aristocracy that were involved in being the elite or the rich or handling the money. And again, those 80%, which included the farmers and the peasants, they began to hate them because everything was for them. The money was for them. The judges for them. The police was for them. Nothing was fair. It sounds almost like Guyana to me. Now, this happened in America. America had its Super Bowl just shortly. And this is a church service. And
Patterson back with the kick.
In each quarter, preachers will be given a random phrase that they must effectively work into their message.
And my understanding is these are completely random. They have never seen them before, seriously.
You know what's
Well, hey, folks, time to meet our players. Let's head down to the field for today's starting lineups.
The myth, the legend, Brian Cole. Team Mingo!
that's the other pastor of the church.
No, we'll just call it when it lands.
So these are two pastors of the church again, just part of Super Bowl church program, Sunday church program.
Yeah, let's just go with tails. Would you like to kick or receive the Bible?
I will receive.
Tome wins the toss, chooses to receive the Bible. Patterson back with the kick. Oh my goodness! Is that a touchback? Can you even get a touchback?
First time in 18 years there's a touchback for the kickoff. Super Bowl.
If we look at what's happening in the Protestant world, again, I look at America because America is pivotal in bringing back. America is probably going to be one of the hardest hit countries when the principles of this revolution that they have fostered now really comes into place, especially in the cities. So can you imagine this was the Sunday preaching service? I mean, this church must be the coolest church ever, but it's also one that of the most ridiculous. Surely you can see that is the principles of Voltaire. It's the same principles of the 1789 French Revolution. Now, we want to move over to this other principle that came around. And this was humanism again. And with humanism, the idea that we can make our own decisions between right and wrong because we are gods in ourselves. The idea that we have accepted deism, which is a God that created, but he's not involved. And the idea leads you to a sense of you being a half God, a demigod. And this fellow here is interesting in what he says. And listen to him, listen to the other people.
Hi, I'm Rod Saunders from Jew and Greek. Moralistic therapeutic deism. Ever heard of that before? In recent years, it's become a catchphrase in the online theological community.
Moralistic therapeutic deism.
Moral therapeutic deism.
Moralistic deism.
Moral therapeutic deism.
Moralistic therapeutic deism.
Moralistic therapeutic deism.
So today we're going to be analyzing and discussing this expression. I first heard of moralistic therapeutic deism, or MTD, in 2019 when I watched the Calvinist propaganda movie, American Gospel Christ Alone.
I think it was Christian Smith who said that what we're seeing nowadays in the American church is the rise of what he calls moralistic therapeutic.
Notice carefully, he says what we're seeing in the churches in America is this rise of moralistic therapeutic deism. It's the idea of, and again, it's based on morality, so it's based on goodness, again, humanism, the sense of being able to choose right and wrong, and it's based on the therapeutic part of the idea is community religion, so doing good for people, and that's about all it is. There is the complete eradication of doctrinal differences, and the adaptation of just a religion based on doing good, where we choose right and wrong. So again, that is the idea. And again, it's deism, same humanism, just in different clothes. If we go over to the idea of romanticism, again, Rousseau in the French Revolution, the idea that he believed that man was inherently good and we can follow our own hearts. This idea has been propagated in Disney, countless times. But I want to show you, not only in Disney.
I am a Christian. That is my faith. I'm not asking you to be a Christian. If you want to be one, I can show you how. But it is not required. I have respect for all faiths. All faiths.
So Oprah came out and very clearly said she's a Christian, and she can even teach you how to be a Christian. She has respect for all faiths, as do I, but she's a Christian. Well, again, this idea of man inherently good, following your own heart, romanticism, closely aligned with humanism. Let's hear from her some more.
It talks about, one of the points it brings out is one of the mistakes that human beings make is believing that there is only one way to live. That's right. That we don't accept that there are diverse ways of being in the world, that there are millions of ways to be a human being.
Please God?
And many ways, but many paths to what you call God.
That
and
is
her path
pleasing.
might be something else, and when she gets there, she might call it the light. But her loving and her kindness and her generosity brings her, if it brings her to the same point that it brings you, it doesn't matter whether she called it God along the way or not.
And I guess the danger that could be in that, it sounds great on the onset, but if you really look at both sides,
there couldn't possibly be just one way. What about Jesus? What about Jesus?
And you say there isn't only one way. There is one way and only one way, and that is through Jesus.
There couldn't possibly be with the millions of people in the world. There couldn't possibly be.
Because you say, you intellectualize it and say there isn't. If you don't believe that, you're all buying into the...
Thank God for that Christian lady in the day. She was stuck with the one with. Now, that was a long time ago. If you notice, Oprah was a different look. That was years ago, and America actually was in a better place. Now we're rushing the principles that are in the world today, which are being fostered and promoted by Catholicism and the powers that be, and more of the devil himself, is pushing the world back into a situation of a revolution. And notice in Oprah's idea of Christianity, Christianity is just one way. There are many ways. And as long as we reach the same place, it doesn't matter if I call the way God or light or whatever. This is not true Christianity, but again, it's what's being penetrated.
All right, Belief is a landmark documentary series exploring humankind's ongoing search to connect with something greater than ourselves. Oprah Winfrey narrates the program spanning 6 continents over 7 consecutive nights. Belief follows arranged people on their profound journeys, among them a Hindu woman from Chicago seeking more out of life and what she believes. The woman heads to the banks of the Ganges River in India for the world's largest spiritual gathering.
मैं अमेरिका में रहती हूँ और मुझे अच्छी जॉब है, अच्छी परिवार है, सब कुछ है, पर मुझे वैसे भी ना मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि मुझे ऐसी श्रद्धा कैसे मिलती है।
हाँ। सब करने वाले वही है, वही मन में लाते हैं तभी कोई श्रद्धा आती है। जब तक वो मन में नहीं बसेंगे कोई श्रद्धा नहीं आएगी। उनका दरबार इतना लंबा है, वो उनके नाम से ही सबकी गाड़ी चलती रहती है।
Thank you. It was just a few minutes of conversation, but I felt like they could see inside my heart. And what they offered to me was something that I'll never forget. When it's your time, it'll be revealed to you.
Notice this Hindu woman, and this is a documentary called Belief. By the way, all these things are very interesting. All the things that you see here, you feel free to go look them up yourself. It's an interesting journey of research. This lady is part of the Belief documentary, and she goes in search of deeper meaning to her life, and she goes down to Mother Ganges, which is a specific river in India there, and she finds herself involved in Hinduism, where she finds what she was searching for. Now, I mentioned this again because of the fact of this, you are good inherently is part of Hindu teaching. Now, I mentioned that simply because a third of Guyana's main religion is Hinduism. We have a large majority of Hindus that believe just this. And as I showed you, it's not just the Hindus that believe this. Oprah believes it, and all the people that have been imbibing from these streams in terms of many of the churches, all over, people believe this. Many of the presidents, many people all over the world believe this, that they're inherently good. They can choose between right and wrong. They can follow their hearts. Such belief will lead us down a path because the heart is destructive above all things. Who can know it? Spiritism. I told you about the 2 French colonies, Haiti and Louisiana, a part of which is New Orleans. Now, if any of you ever followed Haitian news, you would know that Haiti is one of the countries that has the most political upheaval, natural disasters. It's constantly in trouble. New Orleans, which experienced one of the greatest floods for a while, people were wondering, why are these things happening? Well, it's because it is a seat of voodoo. And voodoo is, again, just the name in the Dahomey tribe. It means spirit. And that system revolves around the drum. The main article of that religion is drum. Now, this is voodoo in Guyana. In Guyana, we've called this kind of voodoo comfort. It's the very same sort of voodoo practiced in Haiti and in Louisiana. Very same sort of voodoo practiced around the world. But it gets a little bit interesting because I told you spiritualism was one of the ideas that came through. But interestingly enough, this idea here, this is the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and this is the same type of voodoo. And this is Guyana.
What is, everything again, I know all of them talk.
Yeah, he's missing it. So that was voodoo that's happening in Guyana from the spiritism that is to the music world in Guyana. This is the Adventist church. And it's the same voodoo because it's surrounding the main object of the spiritual drum. And I told you music, we talked about hip hop and jazz, all of it is the same sort of scenario coming out. Well, it continues. So I told you pantheism, the idea that God is in everything. This was one of another of those French Revolution ideas. And if God is in everything, then we can Christianize everything. So that music that had Christian lyrics, we can say that it was Christian music simply because, well, if God is in everything, everything could be holy, right? So this is Earth Day. By the way, again, Guyana
joins over 190 countries to observe International Mother Earth Day. It marks 50 years of action for environmental protection. This year, we're observing it under the theme Climate Action. Our activities will range from a host of events. The EPA will be hosting a webinar later today.
So Guyana is going to be celebrating Mother Earth Day. Now, Guyana has been celebrating Mother Earth Day for many years. Those of you that didn't know it, I'm sorry, but this video here is from 2009, Cultural Center. It hasn't been a short time that these principles have been formulating, and they're going to become more and more prevalent. I see them everywhere. That's why when I tell you all, I believe law is coming, I can hear it in the back of my ears because I can see the principles of French Revolution being perpetrated everywhere in the world, constantly. Here we have the idea of reservations. And reservations are closely aligned to this idea of Mother Earth. It's being pushed and promoted now. In fact, most of all the new TV series and movies will have in it an indigenous Indian right now because they're like the poster child of Mother Earth in terms of their idea. Now, it's fascinating because I want you to read what's on there. Look, the American Indian experiences at the transition from the 18th to 19th century were rather thoroughly, if indirectly, affected by what? It's like you can't miss the French Revolution. It's everywhere. By the way, the other article at the bottom, which is pasted on Amerindian land titling process is being facilitated by the Amerindian Act of 2006. That's Guyana, and it's being funded by United Nations Development Fund as part of the developmental goals. Reservations, Amerindian reservations, was what was created because the French Revolution caused a slowdown of the fur trade between the indigenous Indians and the Europeans. What happened is that they did no longer wanted to honor the fact that these people were first here and they had all these lands, so they put them on these parcels of lands called reservations. And what they did to them, the Catholics introduced what were called residential schools. And what they did was that they took, this is of Canada, so I'm familiar with the story of one Danny. He was taken from his family. He was 5 years old at the time, he and his sister, and they were placed in these residential schools where they could not speak their own language. Their hair was cut off. They were molested by the priests. He was molested several times. The reason why I know his story personally is because I read it in a book about his therapy, etc., etc. And what they did was that they had cultural genocide. In fact, if I understand right, 150,000 children were lost. They never were found again after they were taken. About 40,000 children were killed. And this is why the Pope went over to Canada in recent years and he apologized to the natives because of what they had done in this idea of reservation. Now, this is a video where the Native Indians are asked to express a word that comes into their minds when they hear the word reservation. Listen to them.
Reservation.
Damnation.
Bleak.
Oppression. Small.
Small. They're beautiful and sad at the same time. It's beautiful because you're surrounded by people that are just like you. But it's sad because everything that affects big cities, whether it's drugs or alcohol or everything's magnified on a reservation. You see it up front, like in your face.
Sick. You know, there's alcoholism, there's abuse, there's domestic violence, there's a lot of things that go on a reservation that really goes overlooked.
Just a compromise. It was an agreement based, well, a forced agreement probably, that Native Americans were put kind of out of the way, out of sight.
Prison. It's like where we're trapped.
What do you think is the most common misconception about reservations?
That there's some kind of abundance, that natives are happy, that they're caring for each other, that they live in some ancient way.
Ooh, sad.
Poor.
A concentration camp. Reservations were made to isolate Indian people in hope that we would die.
In hope that we would die out. I've lived within an Amerindian community for about 14 years, and I can tell you that this is just true. In fact, Amerindian women are 3 times more likely to be in abusive relationships. In Amerindian communities, you're going to find a great amount of alcoholism, and you're going to find them to be isolated. In fact, most of them are scared of Georgetown. The ideology, again, all of these things came out of the French Revolution. And right now, one of the Millennium Goals is to have them again, because in so doing, the people are kept down from speaking out. They're kept in a prison. It's just like the fellow said. It's just like they said. Now, Millennium Development Goals. I showed you that all of these things were part of the Millennium Development Goals. These are the Millennium Development Goals that are out today in the world. Eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. They're planning to do this by commonality, socialism. We're going to talk about that in a while. Achieve universal primary education. I told you that was one of the principles of the French Revolution. It's happening again. It's happening everywhere. Promote gender equality and empower women. In the French Revolution, there were these group of women called the salonières, and what they were the daughters of the aristocrats and the rich. And they would hold like these special meetings at salons where these enlightened people could speak all about these principles. And they're considered the proto-feminists of the world. Gender equality has to do with the LGBT community. Reduce child mortality, improve maternal health, combat HIV, malaria, and other diseases. Those are all code words for vaccination, and more vaccination. In Guyana, if a mother goes to get cesarean section 3 times, she is automatically, without even her permission, tied off. That should be illegal. It should be, but again, these goals are being followed very, very well. Ensure environmental sustainability, that has to do with pantheism, and develop a global partnership for development. This is back to public-private partnership, and that is Marxism. All these things are prominent in Guyana. It's interesting. Coffee houses were especially important in the spread of knowledge during the Enlightenment in the French Revolution. Starbucks is one of the most well-known coffee houses in the world. Guess what just opened in Guyana? We always used to drink tea, right? We drank tea from the British. I grew up drinking tea until I stopped drinking tea. Guess what Guyanese are now adopting? Why? Sister, why? This is taken from the book Christian Temperance and Bible Hygiene. Just hold on, because I can't see the top of that very clearly. The tongue is loosened. When these tea and coffee users meet together for social entertainment, the effects of their pernicious habit are manifest. all partake freely of their favorite beverages, and as the stimulating influence is felt, their tongues are loosened, and they begin the wicked work of talking against others. Their words are not few or well chosen. The tidbits of gossip are passed around, too often the poison of scandal as well. These thoughtless gossipers forget that they have a witness, an unseen watchers writing their words in the books of heaven. All these unkind criticisms, these exaggerated reports, these envious feelings expressed under the excitement of a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, Jesus registers as against himself. The reason why the coffee houses were so important in the spread of these ideas was because coffee and tea, green tea, has the effect of loosening the tongue. It's fascinating. I'm sorry, I'm fascinated by how Starbucks came to Guyana, how the world is. Starbucks is in every single airport that I've ever traveled in, and there's always a very long line. Now, I told you one of the principles was education, right? And notice over there it says, though Guyana is considered to have met its what? Millennial Development Goals. We're all following the same idea. One of the things that came in, because we have to have this kind of universal educational system, is that not only did we need to change from primary 1, primary 2, primary 3 to grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, not only did we need to take out corporate punishment out of the schools, but we have to free up. We have to free up. And so what we have allowed now, this PC girls rocking their hairstyles, we have to allow school children to go with whatever hairstyles they want as an expression of their freedom. And I mean, they're rocking some hairstyles right now. Really rocking it. Again, all part of the principles of the French Revolution. Now, I've come full circle back to the end slide. And I'm gonna, at the top here, as this is a Super Bowl ad. The Super Bowl is watched by 1 out of every 3 Americans. I told you, as goes America, so goes the rest of the world. Every principle is back from the French Revolution. It's all colliding to bring us to a time that has never been. God help us all. That's how I feel about it. I believe that we need to be ready, be ready, be ready, get ready, get ready. And I say it again, get ready. We need to farm, we need food. We need to get our hearts ready. We need to get our lives ready as far as possible. Get ready. Because everything is in place. Every single principle of the French Revolution is here. And guess what? It's not going anywhere. Yesterday, France, which is interesting because I was going to talk about the French Revolution. France, the French, passed a new law in their constitution. The law says that it is illegal for anyone in France to criticize the therapeutic advice, recommendation, and obligated therapies by the state, including mRNA vaccination and any other therapy that France brings back. If you criticize or talk against this, you are likely to face 3 years in prison or a fine of 45,000 euros. This is the first law of its kind in Western world. It's just the first. There are many more to come, including a national Sunday law. I told you, we're the precipice of the end of the world. Now, this will keep changing slides, and as it changes, you can follow it. The first one is parent and child, the second officer and gang member. You follow it as it goes, right? Here we go.
Don't ask me.
Put up by the Christians in America.
Don't have to tell you I love your precious heart.
They're washing each other's feet.
I was standing, you were there. 2 worlds collided, and they could never tear us apart. We can live for 1,000 years.
He gets us. I'm glad Jesus gets me indeed. And what I'm getting from the whole world right now is that what God is saying very loudly is that he's about to come. Now I know Jesus is always about to come, and we've been preaching this. My grandfather was a preacher in Kokwani there, and he would preach, we would go on Bible studies together, me and my grandfather, and he would tell me, Jesus is about to come, and I believed that all my life. I remember sometimes we would even get a little bit excited, Jesus is about to come. But friends, Jesus is about to come. The reason why I say that is because, again, every principle of the French Revolution is here. Let me go back. Let me go back to Sister White's comment right here. At the same time, anarchy is sweeping away all law, not only divine, but human, the centralizing of wealth and power, the vast combinations for the enriching of the few at the expense of the many, the combinations of the poorer classes for the defense of their interests and claims, the spirit of unrest, of riot and bloodshed, the worldwide dissemination of the same teachings that led to the French Revolution, all are tending to involve the whole world in a struggle similar to that which convulsed France. Ready or not, here he comes. But I would say, get ready. The Lord bless you.